Tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou katoa. Welcome to the Olympic Leadership webinar. My name is Xavier Walker. I'm president of the Kiwi Leadership Network. I'm also here with Mac Smith, who will help me with some of the admin. It's a pleasure to have all of you here today for a really exciting webinar. We've got an amazing group of New Zealand Olympians and just outstanding people. We've got Lorraine, Moller, Nick Willis, Anthony Mosse, and Rod Dixon. So this is going to be a truly incredible event. I just want to acknowledge it's been really tough the last 24 months for many of you, and that we just felt that with our organization that it'd be good to having an uplifting webinar to end the year and just to learn a little bit about all these fantastic athletes, to recharge ourselves, to think about goals and where we can go for the potential for 2022. Just a little background, the Kiwi Leadership Network USA, we've been going for about 3 or 4 years. We're a 501(c)(3 non-profit. We're set up to help New Zealanders succeed in the US. We've run events and day conferences in New York, Los Angeles, and Washington, DC. We've also moved a bit online with COVID, with a podcast series and also webinars. You can join us for free at kiwileaders.org. And we have social media channels which you can follow us up, and also a YouTube channel with lots of videos of our past events. So without any further ado, I'd like to introduce my good friend Rod Dixon, who will be the host, and I'll help moderate a bit if we need to as well. Rod is a gem. He is an Olympian and the winner of the New York City Marathon. He's one of New Zealand's most versatile runners. He has run in 3 Olympics. He is an Olympic medal holder, got a bronze Olympic medal in the 1972 Munich Games. He's also competed in the Commonwealth Games 3 times, and he has done an amazing work for kids, both in the United States and New Zealand, for the Rod Dixon Kids Marathon, a very worthy charity, helping kids, educate them about exercise. So without further ado, just welcome Rod to the stage.
Thanks, Xavier, and hi to everybody. And of course, wonderfully to see Anthony Mosse and Lorraine Moller and Max, of course, and Nick's there somewhere. So I hope it'll be just sort of nice and gentle, and let's just have some fun, and let's find out a little bit more about these amazing athletes that we have, and maybe we're the old generation, and we hope to inspire the new generation. So now I'm going to introduce Anthony Mosse. And Anthony, you know, really, you're an incredible legend. You've 2 Olympic Games, and now we've got 3 Commonwealth Games. Commonwealth Games, 4 medals, including 2 golds in '86 and 1990. And your specialty was the 200-meter butterfly. So, and of course, then not only did you do that, you were at Stanford University and graduated with a BA in honors in political science and economics. I mean, it's just incredible. And really, I shouldn't be the one who's talking. So, Anthony, tell us your journey. Bring us in and tell us how it all started, how you were inspired, and where it all started.
Well, KiaOra to everybody. Welcome wherever you may be. And thank you, Rod, for that very kind introduction. And thank you to Xavier and the team for putting such an incredible webinar together. I am the New Zealand Honorary Consul for New Zealand, based in San Francisco, in addition to being fortunate enough to be an Olympian alongside these incredible people. So it's really cool to be able to see Lorraine and Rod again after knowing them for many years. And at some point, I know I'm going to have the chance to meet Nick, who I watched in Beijing in 2008 when he won his first medal. I was over there commentating for TVNZ for swimming. But before I jump into being an Olympian, maybe I'll give you just a quick second on what on earth an honorary consul does, because from time to time, if you do travel and you start to travel again after COVID, it's good to know that we are out there and about. So the Honorary Consul Network, basically, in my mind, looks after Kiwis in three ways. One is in the form of the consular work, two is what I call private work, and three is commercial. And the consular stuff has to deal with, certifications and documentations and that kind of stuff. And that's always a fun thing to do because it tends to be at the end of a process. A Kiwi's looking to buy an asset in New Zealand or get a visa for a partner to move to New Zealand, and they've done a ton of paperwork. And I'm at the end and I just sign a couple of things, and it's a lot of smiles, and off they go with that envelope to send to the authorities. There's also the sad and hard times where Kiwis are in need. And I point to a huge aircraft accident that happened at San Francisco Airport many years ago. And we didn't know if any Kiwis were on board. There were deaths and passengers were sent to the hospitals. And so I spent a bunch of time dialing hospitals to find out if any Kiwis had been admitted so I could alert the consul, or the consulate at least, and also the embassy. Thankfully, none of that happened, but you can imagine it's a pretty sobering time when you deal with that kind of stuff. So that's the personal. And then finally, the commercial. Living in San Francisco, Silicon Valley area, we get a ton of opportunities for incredible Kiwi companies to come up here, build their networks, and raise capital. So it's really fun for me to be involved in that piece of the business. If you are in need of the Honorary Consul Network, there are about 10 of us across the US, from places like Seattle, obviously San Francisco, Sacramento, Chicago, Houston, and across to the Midwest and up into the Northeast of the US. You'll find our address and details on MFAT's website, and we really are here to support the consulate and also the embassy. So that's the consulate side of the hat. Xavier and Rod have asked me to say a couple of words about being an Olympian and what it means to be an Olympian. And I thought about those really high-profile moments where, you're at the opening ceremony, or those wild and crazy times at the closing ceremony where everybody's running around, or indeed when you get the chance to have your flag raised in your honor if you are lucky enough to win a medal. But I thought it was a wee bit more than that. I thought about what I'd carried through to me for the rest of my life as being an Olympian. And I thought about three things in particular that really stood out. And those three things are as follows. The first one is about pride. And the second one is about preparation and enjoying the pursuit. And the final one is where it all comes together in performance or racing. So let's briefly talk about each one of those three things. The pride thing, it's not a gross, gloating, or obvious pride. It's simply an understanding of who you represent. And obviously, in my case, I had an incredible country behind me. And I took that focus of the nation, not just whenever I wore the silver fern, but to every single practice, so that I was trying to represent New Zealand in every stroke, which I think just simply made me a better athlete. So I wasn't wasting a moment in my preparation. So that's the pride piece. The piece that I talk about, enthusiasm or joy to prepare, is really the piece that says that I view my work more in terms of benefits than in terms of sacrifices. And I'll give you a very simple example. My alarm used to go off at 4:45, and I have two choices to view what I'm going to do. It's the sacrifice side of, oh, this work sucks, and it's the benefit side. And the sacrifice side means, or says, it's cold outside, it's dark, I'm going to get into a swimsuit and get cold and yuck and wet. My body's aching from a prior practice. I've got 30 minutes to drive, and oh, by the way, it's raining. But the benefit side of the bed is, you know what? I'm putting my body in good shape. I'm spending time with people I enjoy spending time with. I'm trying to make a national team. I'm learning a new skill or a new technique. So I took the kind of the pride I felt and adopted it so that when I saw a work, I saw it in view of something positive and not something in terms of negative. And then when I wrap all those things together, it's finally what it all comes down to is the actual performance itself. And so I take the pride and I take the preparation. And for me, that used to manifest itself in two things before I raced. So here's the scene. I walk out onto the pool deck at the Olympics, and I'm in nothing but a small pair of togs and goggles and a cap. And I always do two things. I would look for the New Zealand flag. I always knew where it was in warm-ups and training. And I'd just give it a quiet little nod. Yep, there you are. I'm about to represent you. Let's do this thing together. And that was the second to last thing I would do. And the last thing I would do had to do with the fern. And we were fortunate enough that many manufacturers put the silver fern on our little swimsuits down by our hip. And so what would happen is the starter would say, okay, gentlemen, take your marks, and you'd bend over and start to race. And so the last thing I would see before the gun went off was the fern just next to my hip. So I had the flag and I had the fern. So all that really said to me, I was here to represent New Zealand. And I think I've been able to take away a lot of those disciplines, if you will, and adopt them to my work away from the pool. I'm going to take one more moment to make one more observation, if I may, before I hand it back to Rod. And that relates to the connection between the four Olympians that are here today, beyond the obvious, which are the medals that you see. we all spent significant time in the United States racing or training. And I'm a firm believer that to be the best in the world at something, you've got to compete against the best, or you've got to race against the best as often as possible. And the US provides opportunities for both of these for our New Zealand Olympic athletes. The importance of the US-New Zealand relationship is most often discussed with respect to security, trade, and cultural ties. Indeed, the US is New Zealand's #3 trading partner behind China and Australia, with over $4 billion worth of exports. But the US is probably New Zealand's #1 or #2 preparation partner for our Olympic athletes, alongside or beside only Australia. On a serious and commercial trade basis, New Zealand would like to have a free trade agreement, otherwise known as an FTA, with the US, which we currently do not have. But I'd suggest we have another type of FTA with the US in the form of what I'd call a free training agreement for sport, with a free flow of Kiwi athletes who train, race, and develop their careers in the US, absent for the moment, of course, what COVID is doing to everybody. And that's what's great about Kiwis who come overseas. We don't lose them. They don't tend to be the export that doesn't come back, the intellectual property that's lost to another country. They tend to come back and represent New Zealand at the Olympics, Commonwealths, World Championships, and other significant sporting events. In fact, it might even be more than a free training agreement, as the US often pays for Kiwis on scholarship at US universities, much as Nick and I enjoyed when he was at Michigan and I was at Stanford. Now, New Zealand has a rich history at the Olympic Games. We finished 5th for medals per capita at those Olympics, and we're 9th all time in this category at the Summer Olympics. If you look at every Summer Olympic Games between Los Angeles in 1984 and Tokyo in 2020, other than Sydney in 2000, every New Zealand Olympic team has had at least one medalist who spent time in the US at some point in their career, before, after, or between the Olympic Games, either training, racing, or developing into leadership roles that contributed to New Zealand in their sport. In summary, I believe the US is a major contributor to New Zealand's Olympic success as a place for our athletes to train and to race. And I hope this continues as we start to come back from COVID. So thanks again, Xavier and team, for putting on such a great webinar. I look forward to the rest of it. Rod, thanks for your kind intro, and I'm going to turn it back to you.
Thanks, Anthony. Wow. Now that's a journey for the start of this, and absolutely fantastic. And I'll just say, Anthony, pride. I love, that was my inspirational word too. Incredible. And it was always described to me, well, I knew it as pride, spell it, P-R-I-D-E, personal responsibility for individual daily effort. And I loved it. And I just love what you've just taken us through. Just fantastic. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Well, wow. The next speaker, our next guest, our next amazing woman's pioneer, Lorraine Moller. I mean, oh my gosh, from the 800 meters to the marathon, Olympic medals to gain. It's kind of cool that we all got bronze medals. And as Lorraine's always said, or we have always said, we hold up our medal and say, this is the gold medal I won at the Olympics. I liked it so much that I had it bronzed. So it was something that Lorraine and I think I met you at about 18 or 19 on that first trip to Canada, 1973, to the Pacific Conference Games. And oh my gosh, that journey has been incredible. And of course, Lorraine is just amazing with her work with the Lydia Foundation and training and educating coaches all over the world, really, and carrying on the legacy of Arthur Lydia. So it would, Lorraine, 84, 88, 92, 96 Olympics, bronze medal in 92 in Barcelona. A Boston Marathon winner, I think 2 times Fukuoka Marathon. Anyway, Lorraine, you tell us, you take us through your journey.
Look, I had the great fortune to have been an athlete, and at a time when women were rapidly making gains, and there was an evolution of women as athlete, and I felt that I was able to catch a wave and be able to ride it and see just incredible changes, and also personally to be able to make changes within myself, and to learn about how this world works and how to be masterful in doing something. I think it doesn't really matter what you do. I think anything that you develop, and you develop the skill, you learn certain things. I remember when I went to Greece prior to the 96 Olympics, because I was looking for some inspiration, and I was getting a bit old by then. I was 41 years old, and the oldest one in the track and field, and having one more shot at it, and I was really looking for some sort of extra inspiration. And so I went to Greece to find out what it was to be an Olympian, and just to get a sense of the history and what the ancient Greeks were doing. And I had just a phenomenal time there. And what I realized was that the Greeks had the ancient Olympics, and it wasn't just for men. They had the Olympics for women as well. The Olympics actually it's a games. It's named after Olympia, but they had other games. And for the women, they had the Heraic Games after the goddess Hera. But the whole idea was to revere the physical body, of which we all have one, and of which, working with Rod, we realized that the body sort of lost its standing in many ways. And I think it's up to the athletes to keep that mana and reverence for our physical vehicle, because we've all been hijacked somewhat by technology, and for many people the body has just become a pedestal for an iPhone. That mind-body connection is all important, and being an athlete, that's what we learn. We find that with children, and I've worked with Rod with his kids marathon, and that the cognitive body connection, movement connection is very strong, and it's something that we often we don't pay much lip service to, and we need to. And we need to keep moving. That's absolutely essential. If we move well, we create neural pathways that start to connect this whole thing that you call a human being together, body, mind, heart, and spirit as well. And I think all of those things come together as an athlete. And my journey as an athlete was just, it was just such a fabulous time. It was so exciting. It was just to be able to travel and live in different places, to go to games. I remember when I got invited to go to the first marathon that they had in the streets of London, which was a women's event, which was pretty extraordinary in 1980. And they invited me because I'd done a marathon as a training run the year before, and had, and because it was fairly new for women, it was like a world-class time. So I got invited to go to this marathon and got to take my boyfriend with me. And I went, this is just so fantastic. I go to London, I stay in this fancy hotel, I get a flight, I get to bring my boyfriend, and all I have to do is run 26 miles through the street. That was like, geez, that was just absolutely amazing, But it wasn't just only that, it was that all of these events, history was being made. And to feel like you're a part of that is absolutely amazing. Really am a very, very fortunate person who's had just an incredible life because of my pursuit of sport, and those wonderful beginnings in New Zealand, where we had great outdoors, we had fresh air, and Pataru water was really clean and amazing. you know, a robust home and a mum and dad that let you go out and play, and, you know, we'd disappear. My mum would say, no, you can't be inside, it's sunny out, you know, to kick you out the door. And you didn't come home until you got hungry. And then you had a meal of vegetables that we went to the garden and got, that we'd grown ourselves. And what an incredible upbringing.
Lorraine, tell us about your growing up in Pataru. You know, how did you get into running? What inspired you to go out and run in the forests? And was it your dad, or of course you've got amazing brothers who are world championships too? Tell us about that journey.
Well, you know, I had a few bouts when I was a kid of being in hospital, and it just really set me up with, I think, being able to have a good imagination and being resourceful at times when you don't have your family around you. And when I got into running, it just was such a freedom for me. And I was not a fast sprinter. The girls at the local club, you know, if a few of them would show up, you know, I'd be out the back door. But what happened when I was about 13, when I went to high school and I graduated to the senior athletics, you know, and all this is in our little club on a grass track, right? And just a incredible coming together of community. And so here I am. They put on a 440 yards. So tells you how old I am. 440 yards in those days, which was once around the track, right? And I beat the girls who beat me in the sprints. And there's nothing like success, you know, success builds success. And so then I just started going in all these longer events. And I will say how important it is to have that input from the community or for the older people, because you can have such a huge influence on a young person with just a word or just a gesture. So I ran in a school championships, I won the race, and the president of our club, who was really important, Mr. Drummond, he always wore a blazer, he was always had the insignia on his pocket. So, you know, he really looked the part, played the part, and we all did what he said. He was a real father figure. And he came up to me and he said, one day you will go to the Olympics. And, you know, though that was so far out of my realm of even thinking of the Olympics. And, you know, at that time, even the longest event for women in the Olympics was the 1500 meters. So, you know, I had no concept of myself as a long distance runner, as a marathon runner, anything. And yet I did take notice, and I started to pay attention to our own Olympians. And, you know, I remembered Peter Snell and John Davies. And it wasn't long after that John Davies, who lived the Olympic bronze medalist from 1964 Olympics in Tokyo, lived in Tokoroa, which was just 15 miles from my hometown. You can tell how old I am because I'm still speaking in miles. But anyway, so John was asked to come and be my coach, and he did, and he came running with me, and he wrote me a program. And from then on, we would talk on the phone maybe once a week, and he would send me a letter once a week with my program in it. And I still have them. And I followed that. And it was that sort of input. And it was just, nobody paid anybody. Nobody was a professional coach. It was just out of the goodness of their hearts and just giving to the next generation. And so that was really laid down well for us. And the other thing that was the incredible legacy was the Lydiard training. And it's absolutely fabulous training, and it's the basis of most training programs today. And this is another part of our Kiwi legacy of how to train correctly. And so, you know, you have these wonderful experiences, and then at the end of it, and I'm sure all the other Olympians that are here will, I know it's true for them, and they show it, is that it's give back, and you give to the next generation, because life is a pay it forward proposition. And we must give forward for the next generations and give them the best that we've got and what we've learned. And so, you know, I'm very, very grateful to the people like Rod Dixon and Dick Quacks and John Walker. They were the superstars. And, you know, they had a bit of swagger with the young guys. And we'd look up, you know, and I'd go, man, I want to be where they are. I want to have what they have, you know. That was
did better. You did better, Lorraine. You did better. Just tell us, you went to Otago University and graduated in physical education at degree, and you're now based in Boulder, Colorado. And your amazing book On the Wings of Mercury. Just tell us about that journey to Otago, and I think we've got a few minutes for that.
Okay, all right. So when I finished at high school, and I did a lot of running, and I'd already been running on New Zealand teams, and I didn't know what to do for a career. And the only thing that I could think of for a sporty girl was to go to phys ed school and become a phys ed teacher. So my brother was already down in Otago at phys ed school, and he seemed like he was having a good time. So I applied and went to phys ed school as well. Now, my first day in Dunedin, I was standing on the steps of the phys ed school, and I was looking up and down the road thinking, now, I don't know this place, and where do I go for a run? And this group of guys came running by, and it was a group of lunchtime runners. And they saw me standing there in my shorts and my running shoes, and they yelled out, "Hey, Chick, you're going to come and run with the boys." And I went, wow, that sounds like a good invitation. So I joined on the back of these guys, and I went running with them, and they became my training mates. And we ran just about every day. And I had, and they were decent runners, you know. There was Stu Melville and Bruce Hunter and, you know, Ewan Robertson, and, you know, a lot of them were New Zealand representatives. And so, so I'd just hang on the back of them. And then Sundays, they'd do this huge run. I mean, it would go way out on around the port and over the Waitatis and back down the Leith Valley, and oh gosh, you know, and I ran with these guys, and next thing I was running maybe 80 miles a week, which was a lot for you know, we didn't know of any other young woman that were doing it, but that basis that I built up really set me in good stead, and my track running, where I was focused, just became faster and faster and faster. So we fast forward, I became a phys ed teacher. I went to taught phys ed for a couple of years. I didn't really want to be a teacher. I had a calling to be an athlete, but there just wasn't, you know, it wasn't a profession at that stage. And so I eventually ended up in went to the US. I got on a team, and I came home via the US. And actually what I was really doing was I had a guy that I'd met, an American guy, and he'd said, come visit me. And I took him at his word, and I showed up on his doorstep and ended up staying there for 3 years. And married him and divorced him. So it's the whole story. But then I got into this road racing, which was really just the beginning in the US. But the other thing was, that's where I got the invitation to run the marathon, and I jumped in and ran the marathon, and it was such a breeze because I'd already had the training for it. And so, you know, it's just been like a wonderful destiny, you know, and I've just followed, I guess if you look at Joseph Campbell and the hero's journey, he says, follow your bliss. And that's exactly what I did. And it's never let me down. It's always just opened up doors and taken me on these amazing adventures.
I love it, Lorraine. Absolutely. We and hopefully, I can't see Nick at the moment, but I think he's around somewhere. Nick, are you on?
It's coming up, Rob.
Sorry, guys, it's 5 minutes to go in the Michigan State game. It's a 3-point game.
Anybody hear about what the All Blacks and Wales game? I didn't get to see that this morning. Okay, so we'll move on. So obviously, Nick, if we can just you keep one eye on us and one eye on the game.
No, I'm good. I've got it on record now. I'm with you guys for the rest of the show.
Okay. So, well, it's of course, it's oh my gosh, where do we start with Nick Willis? I mean, if I think Lorraine and Alison Rowe and John Walker and Rod Dixon, we handed the baton over to Nick Willis. Unbelievable. And he carried on with this incredible tradition. 5-time Olympian, 2004, 2008, 2012, 2016, 2020, and silver medal in Beijing, bronze medal in Rio. Oh my gosh. I think Nick, 19 consecutive years breaking the 4-minute mile. New Zealand record holder, 1500 and the 3000 meters. Nick, there's nothing more to introduce you. You're just a legend from Lower Hutt, who was a Lower Hutt track. And I remember seeing an incredible photograph of you and Arthur Lydiard. And I think you must have been about 12 or 13, and you were with Arthur Lydiard. And take us through your journey.
Yeah, well, that photo, I'd forgotten about that, Rod, but that probably is a good place to start. I grew up in an athletics family. I've got 2 older siblings. My brother Steve, who was a sub 4-minute miler himself, he's 8 years older, and my older sister Mika, 4 years older than me. They were already part of the local Lower Hutt Athletics Club. So as soon as I was allowed, they couldn't hold me back from getting on the start line on club nights and beer feed. And that was really the highlight of my childhood, was going down to club night on Wednesdays. And I think I even remember watching you, Rod, run at the we called it the Night of the Stars. It was at Hutt Recreation Ground under lights, and my good buddy Royce Wilkie was the organizer. And that was a really fun way to grow up as a kid. And like most Kiwi kids, I played all the sports as well, but athletics in the summer was definitely a highlight, and probably still got grass stains in my feet from those wonderful evenings. What I loved most about athletics was that I got to different disciplines. It wasn't just running. And it taught me how to be a gracious loser, as well as someone who could enjoy winning events as well. And in the shot put, of course, I'm never going to win those events. So I think that's really important for kids to learn. Individual sports can be a bit of a pressure cauldron sometimes, but track, even you get to do different disciplines, it's a good way to find that balance. So yeah, I think that was at the Dawn Cup in Wellington. I was about 9 years old, and I managed to win the under 10 race, and Arthur Lydiard was there as a guest, and my dad asked if he could get a photo with me, and Arthur was getting pulled every which direction. So that was a fun occasion. And then I, of course, got to meet him and Murray Hellberg for the first time at the 2004 Olympics as well. But yeah, athletics is really my part of my family's upbringing. But I was one of those late bloomers who really struggled when I got to high school. I was fairly successful at sports, pretty much hadn't lost a race up until I was about 13 years of age, and most other sports I was decent at as well. But once I got to high school and every other kid hit puberty, my body decided it wanted to wait another 3 or 4 years. So I was that little awkward kid in your classroom trying to get attention, but no one even noticed me. So I had to do louder and crazier things to get that attention, and skateboarding was one of those mechanisms. And I sort of went down that sort of alternative path for several years in high school, knowing that eventually it would be my turn to be an athlete. Like my brother had a similar growth pattern. But I was almost pulled in that direction, being a skateboarder and all of the associated lifestyle with that. You can just imagine. I was pulled every which direction and all of those different temptations. But fortunately, I had my growth spurt just before my 7th form year, my final year in high school, and I think I grew about a foot and I dropped my time significantly. And I realized that what I yearned for most was a chance to get out of Lower Hutt. I hadn't really traveled much the last 5 or 6 years, and I really wanted to go and see what the world was like, and running could be a ticket to do that, because my brother had already gone on a scholarship to the States before. So I would sneak out at 6 a.m. in the morning and get my training runs done, so none of my skating mates knew that I was running, because Forrest Gump, the movie, had come out a couple of years before that. So it's a very uncool thing to do, especially where I was living. And so I sort of like was a secret runner until I won my first big international race. Well, for me it was, and that was a trip over to Australia, and I managed to surprise myself on all my times and beat all the top Australians and Canadians at the Pacific Schools Games. And that really opened my eyes to what was possible. And from that point on, I really owned the identity of being a runner. And I knew that no matter what my friends or classmates or all of the tall poppy sort of stuff that took place at Hutt Valley High School, I thought, stuff it, I'm gonna go do this and head off to the States if I can get a scholarship. So that was, yeah, that's sort of my upbringing in New Zealand.
Wow, that's incredible. Nick, tell us, you have 2 boys, 2 sons, and you know, your family life now, and what you're doing with and where about you're living in whereabouts are you living?
I'm still in Ann Arbor. It's where the
Ann
University
Arbor,
of Michigan is, and that's where I went to college. My wife's family's from 90 minutes away, so we met in college. Her name's Sierra, and she wasn't a runner when we met, but we decided, because of I had an opportunity to go, I was already a professional runner when we met, actually. I turned professional after my 3rd year at college, and I had some pretty great opportunities to travel a lot. So we decided to do it as a family business from that point on. I wasn't part of the Detroit Lions or the All Blacks or people where there's like a whole team and support network behind you. So we created our own support network. We had my wife and my coach, and we ended up employing my brother at the time to be my assistant coach, and his family came along. And that year, going into the Beijing Olympics, we were called Team Willis, and I really had an amazing support network, as we based in Michigan but traveled all over the world to different races and training camps. And I really felt like I was invincible when I got to the start line that year. And so my wife, eventually over the years, she ended up assuming the role that my brother had filled those first couple of years. So it was natural for her to eventually take over and become my assistant coach, because she was hanging around with Ron Whithurst every day, my coach from the University of Michigan. And he sort of took her under the wing, and now she's starting her own coaching career separate of just coaching me. And we've got 2 young boys, 8 and 3, Lachlan and Darcy, and they've come to every workout I've ever done. I've been a part of our training group, and my training partners are like uncles or big brothers to them every day. So they have a ton of fun hanging out with Dad and that's what motivates me to still keep as a really great environment to be around 3 or 4 times a week.
Yeah, Nick, not only, you know, with your track, but you actually won the 5th Avenue Mile in New York City 5 times. 5 times you went out there and won that, ran away from the best milers in the world on the road. Tell us about that journey.
Yeah, well, at the very end of the season, it's after a long year, especially on an Olympic or World Championship year, normally it's a good 4 to 5 weeks afterwards. And the truth is, I would put down at least 3 of those victories exclusively to my wife, that she kept me motivated and disciplined. You sort of want to let your hair down a little bit after a championship and sort of get a little lazy with your training and get a little bit more greedy at the dinner and dessert tables and all that sort of stuff. But she would always like encourage me, you'll enjoy your off season that much more if you like go all the way through to the end and like come away with a victory at 5th Ave. And that definitely was the case. And so it's about staying motivated those extra weeks. I also always enjoyed running a more conservative race than most people. If you watch me, obviously at the Olympics, most people complain, why is he always hanging at the back? But I don't have very good acceleration off the line. So I want to conserve that energy rather than do something I'm not good at. And a Fifth Avenue mile being a straight direction, it doesn't matter how slow you start, you're never boxed in, you never have to surge to get around people. There's always a space to slowly move up the race as you wish. So it really played to my strengths, and being patient. When you see the finish line, you think it's time to start sprinting, but that last 400 meters seems to go forever, because it's actually about 800 meters to the finish line. It just seems like you can see that finish line, it's never coming. So I would just wait and wait and wait and wait until everyone else has made their moves, and I'll try and be the last one to make my move. And 5 out of the 8 times it seems to have worked pretty well. So it's always been a fun way to finish the year, and then go on a good 3 or 4 week vacation after that to reflect on hopefully what would have been a successful season.
Wow. Well, Nick, I've mentioned, 19 years you've broken the 4-minute mile. Are you going to keep going till you're 40?
I don't have any intention of stopping, put it that way. Like, now that I'm working full time, I've got a job working for a running brand called Tracksmith, and I'm in the marketing department. So my running actually helps our endeavors, trying to get our brand out there as well. But also, after a stressful day working, there's no place I'd rather be than going for a run with 10 of my training partners. Like, it's my social outlet. I treat running more as a fun endeavor now rather than a priority. But I've got some very, very good training partners who ran at the Olympics, one of them in the steeplechase for the US, and one is the high school record holder in America. He's only 18. So I'm really excited to be a training partner for them and help sort of lead them into the next stage of their career, since I've already been there, done that, and it'll probably keep me going so long as I'm healthy. But I'm also now going to the skate park about 100 days a year, and I'll ski and snowboard in the winter, and I'm now playing rec basketball. So I'm willing to take a few more risks that the last 20 years I was always putting that stuff to the side because it wasn't worth jeopardizing my body for my Olympic dreams.
Yeah. And just very briefly, injuries or anything, surgeries or injuries, what some of those things were obviously defining moments of how you came back to being a 5-time Olympian.
Yeah, I have actually had quite a number of significant injuries, Rod, but I will say, even though I've had 5 surgeries and about 6 stress fractures and a number of muscle pulls, none of my injuries were ones where they just nagged and dragged on. Like, people who have Achilles tendonitis or plantar fasciitis or lingering knee pain, they're stuck in this sort of purgatory where they are half training, half trying to heal it, and it never gets them anywhere. All of my injuries have been pretty straightforward. It's like, all right, you got to go under the knife and then rest for 4 months, or you just got to rest because you've got a bone injury. And so it's just clear cut. And I've always I've cried, I've grieved, I've gone through all of the processes, all of that, but then reset my goals and recalibrated, and it's been a refresher as almost an emotional break from the sport each time. And I was always fortunate that by and large they were in the off season, so I had enough time to come back and still salvage half of a season and keep my sponsors happy. And those checks continually come in, kept me in the sport as long as I have, and which many other runners didn't have that luxury when they were battling different injuries. It was perhaps for them time to get a real job, to take care of their family. I was still able to pursue my running despite those many setbacks.
Incredible. Well, I think Xavier and Max, we haven't heard from you yet, but I think you guys are going to host the Q&A part now, and it's just what an incredible journey with these incredible athletes and great friends. Yeah, thank you.
Thanks, Rod.
All right, fantastic. Just going to get everything ready. Just an amazing to hear everybody. Just Anthony, Rod, Lorraine, Nick, just awesome. Just I think all of us are just taking so many gems and just kind of reliving so many amazing memories, not only for New Zealand, but also just to hear the backstory. And I think that showing your vulnerability, each of you, I think it's really helpful for each of us to hear this. So a lot of people online, and just acknowledge everybody online. So please put in on the text any questions, we'll answer them. I forgot in my enthusiasm at the start, I just want to do a shout out to our sponsors and supporters. So the New Zealand Consulate, obviously Anthony, thank you very much for all the work you do. And just shout out to the LA Consulate, Martha's there online, who's been great supporters in the New Zealand Embassy, the US New Zealand Business Council, big shout out to them. I see Leslie online, shout out to the Kiwis in San Francisco and everybody in San Francisco, and KiaOra USA. Vaughn and Jackie and the Kiwis in LA. So we've got all these amazing Kiwi communities. I would just acknowledge we work with a lot of them. Also Kia, just join them. They all have fantastic events. I've been to many of them, and they really just help that fabric of in the United States, just especially when you're trying to kind of need a little bit of Kiwiana when you're in the States. They're great organizations to be a part of. So we're going to run the Q&A. So just we'll start off there. I don't know, Rod, do you have any sort of, you've been listening attentively through this whole thing. Did you have something to start us off for the panelists?
Well, I think actually I do, right? I do. It's somewhere here. We have some. Yeah. Well, I think probably what I mean, actually, when I look through it, these are incredibly professional presenters, and they've pretty well covered some of the questions that you and I and Max had talked about. How did they got into running? Well, participation, and Anthony answered, and Lorraine has answered, and Nick has answered. It's just like the college experience, careers in the US and the highlight. I mean, and Lorraine covered Boston and the New York experience. I mean, I'm looking down here, and I'm thinking, oh my gosh, perhaps the advice on goal setting and achieving things. Anthony covered some pretty inspiring things with his journey at Stanford there, but perhaps if we can synopsis it into give their advice on goal setting and achieving things. So Anthony, you go ahead first.
Well, I get to lead with that one. Well, goal setting for me was to try and do as much as I could to help myself long term by being the best I could be, what I called here and now. And so that was simply breaking down the massive goals of a season into a session by session and into a stroke by stroke moment. And I mean, that can sound like a ton of pressure, right? It's okay, well, I've got there were times where I do a 10,000 meter set in the pool. That's not with, wings on your feet. That's unfortunately togs around your body going up and down a pool. And that can get awfully boring sometimes. So for me, it was just breaking it down and looking for a game within the game. So if I had a long set, maybe a half hour, 45-minute set, I'd set myself up to see where other swimmers were at different points in time when we were working out and see if I could catch up to them or see if I could lap them. So it was playing the game within the game, and with the realization that at every single practice, as I talked about beforehand, I was carrying, as if I was representing New Zealand. And I think you just build a whole bunch of those, popcorn kernels, and you keep dumping them into the bag. And after a while, the bag starts to get rather heavy. And so for me, it was just big term, don't focus on the big stuff, focus on the small stuff, and have a ton of fun while you're doing it. Lorraine touched on that as well. I mean, if you follow something that you love, you tend to be interested in it. And when you're interested in something, you tend to improve in it. And when you tend to improve in it, you actually enjoy it a little bit more. So it's kind of very simple and just keeping things to the basics. And then I think when you jump all the way forward to that moment where I think is the ultimate, which is the whole moment in time when you're about to perform, I like what Nick said. You stand up there, and when he went to Beijing, he felt like, no one could touch him. And I feel like putting yourself in that moment is so incredibly important. And the work that puts you there, so that you can look across at people and say, well, I don't think anybody's worked harder than me. This is my time. So again, it's not rocket science. It's just keeping it very simple. And I've taken a lot of that stuff into my business career and adopted that same kind of discipline and approach. And it seems to have worked out there okay. So it's keeping things simple, one step at a time.
All right. Lorraine?
Yeah. I think we're all probably pretty good at setting goals and have learned that it is actually a skill to focus your energy into a single pursuit and to pursue excellence. So, you know, the big goal for me was always to be standing on the Olympic podium. And that kept me just going back again and again and again. And probably partly that goal was seeded by Mr. Drummond, who came and told me as a 13-year-old that one day you'll go to the Olympics. The whole idea of goals is that we choose a future event and then we learn how to draw that event into our reality, and we get feedback from it. And I see that somebody wrote, how did we learn from our failures, or what did we learn from our failures? And it's a really good question, because actually you learn by how you miss the mark, you know. And when you get your butt handed to you and you come away and you know, you haven't done as well, then you figure it out, and you do a debrief and you go, okay, so this and this and this, and what was it that I wasn't quite doing correctly? So in my first Olympics, I finished 5th. And so then when I went to the next Olympics 4 years later in Seoul, naturally the expectation was, and I felt that very strongly, that I would pick up a medal and improve on that 5th place. And I just ran horribly in that race. Everything went wrong. You know, you either get into a flow or it just all goes to hell in a handbasket. And it seemed to me that in that race, and I realized that afterwards that I just felt too pressured, and and I put that pressure on myself, but I couldn't get in the flow of things. But what it did was it set me up for Barcelona 4 years later. And I think if I hadn't had such a dismal experience in Seoul, I wouldn't have risen as well to the occasion in Barcelona. So, you know, in Barcelona, I very deliberately engaged exercises to deal with pressure and to get into that space, because you have to learn in a high pressure environment like the Olympics to become the eye of the storm. And that's something that I deliberately practiced going into Barcelona, and that paid off for me. So yeah, so goals are really important. It's like setting your compass, but then you have to let it just rest. You don't need to go back, and once you've set your compass, you've set your compass, and then you just pay attention to what shows up and you do what is necessary along the way. And it's like Anthony says, when you go, when you get up in the morning and you go, oh dang, you know, I've got this on the training program, and do I really want to get out of bed? And I'd really like to just close my eyes for another hour or so. But what you do is, because you have that goal and you've made that commitment to it, you do it anyway, because you also know that if you don't do what is required of you, you're going to feel pretty bad about it when you wake up and you've missed your training. You know, there's a lot of satisfaction in keeping on task. And so yeah, the goals are important, but goals also need to be well set, and it needs to be something that stretches you, and something that when you think about doing it, it fills you with joy. And if you don't have that enthusiasm with the goal that you've set for yourself, probably not going to happen. It's probably going to be pretty hard all the way. Yeah.
Wow. And Nick, you take us through your goal setting, and yeah, and let's have your perception on goal setting, and how do you overcome failures?
Yeah, I think Anthony and Lorraine covered a huge amount of what I was thinking as well. But I will say that as I've reflected back on my career and my life, like now that I'm sort of entering a new phase of my life, all of the moments in my life where I felt like I had no purpose to them and I was sort of drifting through and I really wasn't sure like who I was as a person and what's my role in this world were all periods of my life when I didn't have a clear goal in front of me. But the times that I felt most alive, that I've had the most purpose, that I've been really on my game and I feel like I'm a positive contributor to the world have been when I've had a clear goal in front. It's not that I haven't known how to set a goal. I think innately I've always known, but it was the fear of whether I was willing to put it out there, because then it requires that sort of, I am a tunnel vision focused sort of person that everything else becomes a blur and I'm just like zoned in on that. And so sometimes I'm like afraid that that makes me less able to connect with other people or able to like enjoy other facets of life. But the truth is that's when I feel like I'm the most me, the most Nick Willis. And at times it's been for running goals. It might be in the off season and when I'm really trying to lower my golf handicap or whatever it be. Like if I have that goal in front, like I'm excited to get up every single day. And like, I feel like I've got an absolute purpose for that. And that has definitely applied. It's been probably a smaller wavelength throughout my early sort of post running professional career that I've only been working for just under 2 years. And it might be like 2 months on, a month off. But like when I've had clear career goals, it's really given me a different emphasis. I think specifically to my running at the London Olympics is the one Olympics that I deem as my failure, where I finished right at the back of the field in the final. And I really wasn't sure if I was willing to put out any goals ever again, because I hated having a goal and not achieving it, right? But I drifted for those next 2 years and I went to the next Commonwealth Games without a goal. I just thought, I'll just go and enjoy the moment. And I came away with a bronze medal, which would be considered good, but I wasn't even satisfied by it because it hadn't come with the sacrifice and all of the tunnel vision focus and before. And so it really doesn't come down to the result. It's the enjoying, feeling alive for me is why it's so necessary to be willing to put it out there and set a goal. And as I mentioned earlier, with my wife and my family and other people coming involved, that gets elevated tenfold when you bring other people who share that same common goal. And you may not necessarily be in a team sport or a team environment in your professional life, but there are ways to involve other people in your close-knit community to share a common goal, and that elevates that sense of purpose even more.
Wow, that is so amazing. This when Xavier, when you get this and it becomes readable, and this is going to be so inspiring to everybody. It's just some great stuff there. Actually, Dick, I was just going to ask you, when you mentioned golf, is that part of, do you do that speed golf? I remember Steve Scott had a record of winning speed golf. Is that how you play golf?
I got involved in speed golf for several years, but when we had our second child, I basically haven't picked up my sticks ever since then. We try and do activities where he can get into it. So BMX is our sport now that we do as a family.
Yeah. Right, well, Xavier, I think I know people have got a day ahead of them, and I see Zion Armstrong was on.
I think we've got one more question, then I'll ask a quick one as we finish off. So Nick Brown asks, hi Nick, good to see you in Canada, logging in. Lorraine and Anthony, how did you know it was time to finish your competitive career, and did you participate and compete at all at sport after you retired? So we talked a little bit about transition in the pre-thing. So Anthony, maybe you want to lead off?
Sure. So my Olympic medal in 1988 came with a ton of sadness. My father had just passed away, and he was in New Zealand and I was in Canada, and it was really difficult. And it wasn't the color of the medal that I had wanted, and I was obviously aiming for gold. But I came away with something that I look back now and say that was a defining moment in my life, and I'm proud of what I stuck at, if it wasn't the medal that I wanted. And I was very fortunate that the Commonwealth Games came around in 1990 and decided to stick around. And so I ended up winning in 1990 carried the flag at the opening ceremony in the front of the New Zealand team. And it just seemed right because I'd graduated from Stanford in 1989. I'd always recognized that my academics were going to take me to the next level. My physical body was breaking down. I was getting older. And so for me, the idea that I could swim and win at home, which I did, and came back with a time that was much faster than the Seoul Olympics, with a little less personal family pressure on me, told me that that was the right time to go. I'd already gone through the recruiting process for management consulting firms out of Stanford and had jobs and stuff that I was thinking about doing. So for me, it just seemed right. So it was a combination of emotional, being in the right place at the right time, but also knowing, and this is something we haven't talked about, but at some point it would be interesting to get into as well, is the transition from being an athlete into going into a career. And it's very topical today, obviously, with the mental health of the athletes and the pressure that everybody else is under, but always looking for what it is, that next step for you beyond, if you don't have a physical body that can take you to the next level, what is it? And we've all found, as every one of these panelists, we found something to do with our bodies. Thankfully, or not thankfully, we're not quite as young as Nick, who can continue to do what he's doing. But for the rest of us, it's looking for that next thing. And for me, it just seemed the right time. And I was happy that when I left, I actually left as the #1 ranked swimmer in my event in the world. And that was enough for me, and off I went.
That's great, Anthony. Really unpacked. Lorraine, I'm going to add a question and with your answer as well. Hannah Miller writes, Lorraine, your story has been such an inspiration to me over the years. I reread the foreword of your book. This is Lorraine's book, by the way. Actually, I got a copy. You didn't sign it for me, but actually this one's signed to someone else. So I got to pick up another copy. But fantastic read if you get a copy. I've also got Rod's book here somewhere as well. Oh, look at this. There we go. There's Rod's book. There's Rod's book. There's a young Rod Dixon. Actually, this one's signed as well, but you didn't sign it for me anyway, so I have to get it. But
I've read that.
It's amazing when you sometimes you get a book and it's signed, it's gold. It's just like it's just amazing. So, but both books are very good. So Hannah's read your book On the Wings of Mercury. So, and she talks about reread the foreword of your book prior to every race and feeling, and it's freeing to think about throwing everything away and just running for the ones of pure self. I'm wondering if you have any tips of reframing or unpacking disappointments or failure when there's not a clear problem or issue. How do you balance persistence towards goals without stubbornly banging your head against the wall? How do you decide it's time to pivot? So that probably ties into the initial question we had, Lorraine. Nice question.
You know, when I was in Greece and I went to the magical sites, so of course I'm going to go to all of those, and in Delphi, written above the Temple of Apollo is the maxim, know thyself. And that's what I see as our journey in life, is to know ourselves and to discover who we are underneath all the roles that we play and the different outfits or faces or personas that we engage in. And I found that this running was, and this competing was like an unveiling of self over time. And so you start to realize the things that you do when you're headbanging. You know, when you go down, you know, you might have a goal and you find yourself veering off it or doing something that is counter towards your goal. And then you have to look at yourself and what's going on, because usually there's a part of yourself that wants something different. And so the whole idea of racing is to bring everything into alignment. So every part of self is on board with what you're aiming for. And in a race, you will find that. And I found that very much when I was in Barcelona, and we were at a crucial time in the race and people had broken away. And here I am with 10 miles to go. And I had to either cover the move or to stay where I was. And suddenly I had two voices and vying for attention. You know, it's like this little devil jumped on my shoulder and said, hey, you know, what are you doing? And I'm like, well, chasing these people ahead because, you know, they've made a break. And this voice said, but, you know, it's 10 miles to go, and, you know, it's a long way yet. Maybe you should, you know, play it safe. And I go, oh, yeah, but no, I feel good. If I don't cover it, then I probably won't get my gold medal. And this voice said, yeah, but it goes uphill. And it finished on a great big uphill, and I didn't consider I was a very good uphill runner, and I'd been training for uphills. And I said, yeah, but I you know, I've trained for the uphills, I'm feeling pretty good. And goes, well, you know, you're not a very good uphill runner, and it's really, really hot. It was really, really hot in Barcelona. And this voice in it, and it's really hot, you know. And I go, but I haven't felt the heat, and I had heat trained for it. And so all these things that were going on. And finally this voice said to me, well, you know, you've got third, you're in third place, and third is really good for you. Now you don't want to go blow it, do you? And I went, oh yeah, that makes sense. And so I talked myself out of going, or this voice did, for the silver or gold. And, you know, and I knew when I finished that there was a part of me that had betrayed myself in that crucial moment, that I hadn't absolutely gone for broke, that I was a little scared, and I just wanted to, you know, that was like, okay, third's going to be good enough. It was a bit of a compromise of my goal. And that haunted me for a long, long time. But those experiences are really like just understanding how your own psyche is put together, and what we allow ourselves to do. You know, and then I sort of got on the other side of it, and I sort of beat myself up for 4 years because I'd only got a bronze and not a gold, you know, and bronze wasn't good enough. And so we can be incredibly hard on ourselves. And it took me another Olympics to realize that, geez, you know, actually what I've got is pretty darn good. And when I finally came to resting on my laurels and appreciating the performances that I had achieved over all that time, that was time for me to give up, you know, because it's when we keep pushing and pushing and pushing, and that's what keeps us going for more and more and more, and until you realize that, you know, now you've just got greedy, you know. and it's the most leveling thing, you know, when you're out there and performing. It will, you know, you've got to be pure of heart, or it'll whack you down, man, and you'll be humbled. And I have been a few times. So, you know, it's a great journey, and look, and it's available to everybody. You do it at your own level. You know, those of us who are really highly driven for whatever reason, you know, we'll go to the top. But I mean, even somebody who just decides to do something and push themselves, you know, the personal gains are just amazing, and there for us all.
Fantastic. All right. Well, we've got to land the ship. I think we've had an amazing last hour or so. So we're going to go around and do final comments. Also, I just want to acknowledge Max Smith, a board member. He's also a 4-minute miler, and he ran with Nick as well. So, well, let's start. Max, you've been listening to this as well, but any final comments or words of wisdom to the audience?
Yeah, I mean, you know, just, I mean, incredible backgrounds and incredible stories from everybody here. And obviously, Nick is a great mate, and I was never really a competitor, but a great inspiration for my running and my career now. And I'm really very proud to have been through those eras with Nick. I've read Kiwis Can Fly many times as well, and I have a copy of your book as well, Lorraine, that I purchased, which is on the way. You know, I would love to dig into a podcast and really ask these stories. One thing that I kept thinking about while you were speaking, Lorraine, was thinking of that real golden era of women's running in New Zealand, and those connections that you would have had, like thinking of like Anne Ordain and Alison Rowe, Diane Roger, those great figures. And it was just incredible, the results that you guys were getting. And seemingly independent of each other, and that was something that really interests me, which we don't have time to get into, and I love that, and I would love to hear your thoughts on that sometime as well. Yeah, I mean, just these amazing comments around goal setting, flow states, this mind-body connection that you really talked about are such critical, they're very critical business concepts, which now I'm starting to realize that the flow states from running and from competing, when you get into that with work and life, is really, really important and really hard to get into. So how you guys kind of dug into those was great. I really appreciate it. So yeah, I mean, just very thankful to be here and to listen to these stories, and hopefully we get to have some time to expand on it a little bit more.
Fantastic, Max. Yeah, no, appreciate that. There's really good comments, and I think that the audience is in there as well. Anthony, do you have any final words for the audience, or any tip?
No, look, it's been a real treat. Rod and Lorraine, to connect with you guys again is awesome. You're a very important part of my childhood, and you know, colleagues, Lorraine and you and I both ran it too. You ran, I swam at 2 Olympics together. And then obviously to the chance to meet Nick for the first time, who I've watched on TV in the US doing indoor and outdoor. So it's a real privilege to be with you guys. And I've learned a ton, and you know, I'm very excited to stay in contact. So thanks very much for your time.
Oh, there's Ronnie. Good on you.
Wow. Fantastic.
Yeah, that's
Very
good.
cool.
What we got next? We got Rod. Oh, let's just do Lorraine, Nick, and then we'll finish with Rod. Lorraine?
Yeah. It's just great to have these. Thank you very much, Xavier, for setting this up, and Rod being such a great host for he's asking these questions, and yeah, a very nice oil between the presentation. So yeah, thank you, and really nice to see Nick in person. So yeah, just always wonderful to see the carrying the torch of the New Zealand Olympians, and it's just, we just seem to just somehow next person pops up, and the next group of people, and there they are to carry on the torch. So we have a amazing background in New Zealand, and such an amazing country, and just absolutely fantastic to grow up there. And I would also just, if you don't mind me, Xavier, we do have, if anybody's interested in doing any of our Lydiard courses, we have a coach's certification course. It's for anyone who wants to know about the Lydiard training in detail. And we have it starting on, it will be Tuesday morning at 8 o'clock for 3 hours each week for 5 weeks. So go to lydiardfoundation.org and have a look if you're interested. And also, if you have hardship because of COVID, you just write to me, Lorraine at lydiardfoundation.org, and I'll give you a break if you need that and you really want to do the course. Thank you, Anthony and Max, and all of you for being here. Really appreciate being in such a wonderful company.
Fantastic. And we'll put those out and the email out to everybody. So if there's any social media for people to follow, or websites or links and things, so we'll put that in. So thanks, Lorraine, Lydiard Foundation, all the work you do, and Anthony with the Consulate. Nick, do you have any comments, final comments, or with the audience?
I got 1% on my phone left before I go. I want to see if Anthony Mosse can coach me on doing the arm action after he won his gold medal in 1990.
Well, you know what, Nick, we'll save that for the next one.
And Lorraine, your race with the bronze medal was the first Olympic. There we go.
Oh, there he goes.
I think he was going to say that yours was the first one he watched, and he watched as a kid, and it inspired him. That's what he said when we pre-call that your Olympics was the first race, and it inspired him to be a runner. So just wanted to share that with you, Lorraine.
Thank you.
It's pretty cool. So
Yeah, I'm on it. Yeah.
yeah, so that's you inspired one of our great runners. So that's awesome. Rod, are you there?
Yes, yep.
Yep. Yeah, do you any closing comments, Rod?
Yeah, well, it's, I mean, obviously, you know, inspiration is the first word that bounces out. Pride, thank Anthony, reminding us all about pride, our personal responsibility, the individual daily effort. And it's just incredible to have it. The inspiration, and I just hope that, you know, that we get this out to high schools and schools where kids can listen to this amazing inspiration and pride that we've had today. Thank you all so very much. Thank you.
Well, big thank you to everybody that's joined us online, whether you're in anywhere in America or New Zealand or around the world. We appreciate each and every one of you. Join us on kiwileaders.org. We're free. We're all volunteers. We're just trying to help Kiwis succeed in the US and also in New Zealand with these times. We're going to send out a survey form to tell us what you like, what you didn't like, what went well, and who should we have on next. We'll do some podcasts. So we'll probably get you guys on some podcasts and go a little deeper. There's a lot to unravel there, but I think each one of us have really enjoyed this. Just a big shout out again to all our supporters, New Zealand US Business Council, Kiwis in LA, Kiwis in San Francisco, KiaOra USA, and Kia. So thanks, Sue, again. Let's do it again. And thanks, everybody. Rod, Anthony, Lorraine, Nick, Max, you're all gems, and we really appreciate it. Thank you.
Great.
Maybe, yeah.
Thank you all.
Bye-bye now.
All right,